You're in the check spot on Raw Dog Comedy.
That was Shalewa Sharp with some tracks from our submission stash. Of course, you can submit as well, thecheckspotshow@gmail.com, and hit us up on Twitter. Now, we've got another interview coming up for you with Kevin Gootee. Kevin is a comic based out of New York, and he's got a web series called Watching Comics, where comics that are a little farther along in their careers critique newer comics, give them advice. The newer comic wins a spot on a primetime show. It's a good learning opportunity for comics to learn from people who have been around a little bit longer. At first, I had my reservations, like, is this mean? Is it actually productive? What good comes from this? After talking to Kevin, I got a much better idea for the show. Sounds funny, sounds interesting. I got to check out some clips, and I do think it helps people learn and grow. So check that out. He's pitching it around as a TV show. Could be some big things to come for comics watching comics. Today we are here with my buddy Kevin Gootee, who is a comedian, host, and creator of the web series Comics Watching Comics. Thank you for being here, Kevin.
Hi, Emma.
How's it going?
It's going.
You and I look a little bit alike.
I made the joke when we first started. I've been doing comedy 6 years. I know you're close to that range as well,
Yeah.
right? I made the joke, I think, at a mic one time. I said, you and I go to the same barber.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's true.
We could totally be like the fraternal brother and sister combo, twin combo here. And
yeah, there's sometimes I'll look at certain people and I'm like, I see myself, but... So I mean it as a compliment, I think.
It fully as a compliment.
I appreciate it.
And likewise.
So Comics Watching Comics, give us a little bit of the backstory on the web series.
Sure. As you know, comedians, we all have to go to open mics, especially in the
Yes.
early days. Those are just drudgery.
They are, but you know what? If I don't do them, I miss them.
You do.
Yeah.
There's a certain love-hate relationship that you do miss if you're without going to one for a while.
I don't know if it's a self-destructive thing or if it's... Because sometimes I'll even just be at a mic almost compulsively. It's a weird psychology, but... Open mics are for other comedians because you started in New York.
Yeah, absolutely.
In other cities, the open mics are for you are performing in front of real people.
Okay.
So in New York, it's even harder.
Right. But it's at least a good way to network, though, and
Totally.
have a whole way of friends. So anyway, story is this. I was at the Grizzly Pear, another open mic haven.
Yeah.
Do a lot of shows. Their shows, there are plenty. I'm sure you've definitely been, barked at by someone trying to get you to see a free comedy show.
Yep.
And I was at a mic one day, and it was just especially brutal. The energy was terrible. Everyone just sucked.
Yep.
And I just started texting someone I was sitting next to, and we're just cracking wise about the comic, about the atmosphere, just everything. I said, man, this...
Was it comics you knew or was it new people?
It was both.
Yeah.
It was both. It was a mix. And we're just going back and forth, like being mean at times, like, oh, that's a good joke, but mostly mean because, it was just a terrible, terrible day. And I thought, man, this could be a great show. I'm like, oh, wait, hey, dummy, they already have a show called Last Comic Standing.
Right.
So we got to tweak that. So over the couple of years I'm thinking about it, I've been playing around with it, and I twisted it around, and that's how it came to be, is just from sitting at a mic one day, bored and just disgusted with myself and comedy in general.
Right. Have you had yourself on the show? Have you had people critique a video of you?
Well, it's funny you say that. JC Knows Best is a buddy of mine. He does a podcast called 3 Drink Minimum.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, and he's going to have me on where I'm going to face 3 comics, and they're going to have their sight set on me, so to say.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And the thing is like getting critiqued. Basically, we're getting critiqued anytime we do comedy because the audience is critiquing us.
Right.
And I've hired a comedy coach before to give feedback.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did it when I first moved to New York. I did it. I think before a big audition, I did. The thing is this.
Did it work? Is what I want to know.
It was really helpful.
Okay.
It was helpful in terms of here's a good way to hold the microphone stand. Here's a good way to pause. The times I tried to do it, I think it was 3 times over the years where they help with writing. That was hard.
Okay.
Because it was just hard. It wasn't something I would say, and then I'd be trying so hard to remember what they said that I would then screw up. You know what I mean?
Right.
What do you find most of the feedback is when the comics are... Because if you haven't seen the show, the premise of it is... Actually, I'll let you tell it.
The premise is this. I like to call it if Last Comic Standing and At Midnight had a baby. And
Yes.
that's what this is. So what we do is we're going to actually tape another batch in the next month or so. So
Nice.
Stay on the lookout. Go to comicswatchingcomics.com. You'll see all the information. Facebook, Comics Watching Comics. Twitter, at Comics Watching. And I'll announce when the next casting is going to be. But here is the story. So I'm going to tape another 50 comics or so at New York.
50?
I did 48 the first time. Yeah. In one afternoon. Had a break in between, brought some cookies in, and did
Wait, so the comics when they were submitting, so I thought people were just like submitting sets that they had, so they taped it for the show.
Everyone, I had an afternoon where they all came to New York Comedy Club on a Saturday afternoon, and I taped 48 comics back to back to back to back to back.
Whoa.
That was a long day.
Yeah.
I just wanted to end myself and a lot of others after the day was over. I'm like,
there an audience? Was there an audience?
No, a couple, only because myself, the crew, which 2 people, and the rest of the comics, there wasn't much room for audience.
Right.
So I couldn't say, and invite all your friends, because then I don't want to, have comics outside going, I can't even sit in here and be part of this. But I made it say, hey, look, none of you can leave. If you leave, you're out. I'm going to cut your piece and you're out. So if you leave, and I know I will know you leave, I will cut you out. So they all stayed. Everyone was very supportive, even to the very bitter end, which was pretty good. So I taped them. So then after that, I took one half, about 20-ish comics, and then I invited 3 panelists over to my house to watch, critique, praise, advise, or if had to be, shit on them if they were that bad.
And how'd you pick the panelists?
People I really like and have done something. I don't want to have just myself and my buddies, because like, well, who the hell's Kevin Gootee, shitting on me? He's in the same boat or even less time in this than I am. So I got people who've done stuff, who've been on TV shows, who've toured and done USO tours.
Right.
So and people I like, admire, think are funny, and again, have done stuff. That's how I based it on.
How did you see like a lot of commonality, like this? Because sometimes when you start watching a ton of stand-up, especially when people are auditioning, you can see certain things that people do,
right?
And it's good learning, because you're like, oh, I gotta get the mic stand out of the way right away. Or did you see certain things where like right away you would be like,
it out? Oh yeah, people were fitting with the mic stand. People were just not focused, and we called it right out. One comic, she was supposed to end on a high note. She had a great joke, big applause. And then she went on for like another 15 seconds, and we're like, "Get off the stage! Get off! You had it! Get off!" So stuff like that. We were always we had a bunch of trained eyes. I would say the panelists and myself we were looking for stuff like that. Some people fell in those traps. Some people knew better.
How do people take the feedback?
Mostly pretty well. I'm surprised that the people who did get shit on were pretty cool about it.
Right.
A couple people were like, "I get it. I had a bad set. That was 6 months ago. And I'm better now than I was," and I completely believe that.
That's great. So
some people were a little bit like, "Hey, that's a little rough." I didn't.
What's the meaning? Like, what was? Well, because see, now it makes more sense that you had all those taped. Because at first I was like, oh, if people are submitting their sets, they can submit the best set of their life.
That's exactly why I decided to bring them all in live.
Good thinking.
Exactly, and also audio video quality could be crap for one person,
right,
great for the next, and I needed a standard, standard set.
What was like the meanest feedback that someone had? Because it's got to be constructive.
No.
That's the key. If someone's giving you feedback, it can be mean, but if it's constructive, you're like, all right. But if someone's just like, kill yourself.
I have so much stuff on the editing room floor that is goddamn hilarious, but so fucking mean.
Yeah.
But I would say the meanest thing that was said that was constructively given was this guy was on, and I'll tell you later, you know him, and it was saying, well, we can see it. We can definitely tell that comedy is not going to be for so and so. This is his Tuesday night pool league. This is a night out.
Right.
This is just a thing to get out of the house once a week. But this is not going to be a full-time thing for that guy.
Right. Ouch.
Right.
Which I think getting that feedback could actually save someone. Although no one can tell anyone else, I guess, like necessarily like, something is not for you. Who knows? Maybe someone could be full of surprises.
Right.
People told Danny DeVito to quit show business.
Well, Joe Pesci just told Louis C.K. he should quit comedy.
What?
Like 2 weeks ago.
What?
Yes.
Why?
I just saw the quote. I didn't read the full story. He was on Stern talking about, which I missed that interview of all things.
Right.
But I missed it. I thought that was like Joe Pesci, like, hey, you should quit comedy.
Was he joking?
No.
Was he? Why did he think that he?
I wish I had done my homework and with that anecdote before coming in here,
right?
So I could fully answer your question.
That's so. The thing is comedy's so subjective,
right?
Because then maybe he really doesn't like Louis. But the thing is even if a comic isn't for me, if they're super successful, then I'll be like, oh, I get it. There's a couple comics I actually just started
names.
I started appreciating Maria Bamford more, but in the beginning I was like, oh, she's not necessarily the type of comedy that speaks to me.
Right.
But obviously she's extremely talented because so many people love her. So it's not for me, but obviously she's a great comic.
Right.
I wouldn't be like, quit,
right,
says I, even though you have had so much success. And now I'm into it.
I don't think Louis C.K.'s stand-up is good at all. I like his show. I'm so bored by it. His show was turned the corner big time last season, but I was bored. I'm bored to tears to the stand-up.
Whoa.
Aziz Ansari, I don't get, and I don't think I'll never get.
So if these guys, if they submitted a tape and they were on Watching Comics, you'd be like, put a fork in it.
I mean, if Louis C.K. was on, you'd be like, times are tough for Louis C.K. if he's on my show. Let's just call it out. But yeah, no, I would not be calling out Louis and telling him to quit.
Who are your like favorite comics?
I love Dave Attell. He's my all-time number one. Rodney Dangerfield is a very close second. I love Daniel Tosh. I think he's great.
I saw him live. It was awesome.
Tosh was I was a little disappointed. I loved the show. His stand-up was pretty good. His album was great. But the last special was...
I didn't see the last special. Have you gotten to see a live show?
I have. I saw him at the Beacon a few years ago.
Did you have a good time? Because the live show I saw was great.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good. I dug it. But Dave Attell, I think there's never a time where he's been below a 9.9.
Man, so Dave Attell would be a great judge.
And I reached out actually to a few famous comics, him being one. Nick DiPaolo got back to me and said, quote, $8,500 will get me there. I'm like, what I can promise you is I'll feed you and give you booze. That's what I can offer. $8,500. I get it. Your time is more valuable. But it's not the budget.
If you could be critiqued by like any like group of comics, who would you want to get the feedback from?
I would probably say those three.
Woo!
I mean, again, I'm sure they'll tell me I suck, but at least I could say, hey, what's up to Rodney and Dave? And I mean, I see Dave all the time outside in the city, but or Tosh too, but yeah.
I would love to see what like Jim Norton,
right? That's
Wanda
another one.
Sykes. It's tough. Oh, I mean, I liked Norm Macdonald on Last Comic Standing.
He was excellent.
Yeah, I thought he was great.
And I thought that show, it didn't have that punch. Right. There was a lot of ass kissing. But Norm was just like, nope, not for me. Not it. I loved it. I love that honesty, and that's what I think our show tries to do. People were like, oh, yeah, you're setting us. No, I'm like, it's not like I had a checklist and said, okay, we really gave high marks to these last three comics. Now we have to shit on two of them and give the third one a mediocre review. No, it was all organic honesty, and that's what it is. Because, one of the people's reasons why is because how many times, I'm sure you've done bringer shows in your day, right?
Yeah, I remember doing them, and that's something unique to New York. So that if you're not in New York, a bringer show is basically pretty obvious where you have to bring people to get on stage. So they didn't have that in Boston.
Right.
They didn't have it. So when I got here, I was like, I remember putting an ad up on Craigslist where I was like, I'll pay for your ticket and give you $5 if you'll be my bringer for the show.
Look at you, Scrooge McDuck, with that money floating around.
And then I did the math on it and was like, yeesh, and I canceled it because I got a bunch of responses and people they were like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, this shit is expensive because it's also 2 drinks.
Right.
Didn't end up happening.
Did you also get a lot of emails about foot massages and shit like that, or no?
I didn't, surprisingly, but just like dick pics. But no, I didn't get it. I didn't get that. But the bringer show. So I think I only ended up doing like 2, but that mainly because I didn't have that many people to bring. I didn't know that many people in New York.
So with the bringer shows, you get a lot of generic feedback.
Right.
But this is more for intermediate comics. Bringer shows are more for the beginning people, but this is more of a realer feedback you're going to get as opposed to, oh, how long have you been doing comedy for? Oh, a year? Well, keep writing. Right. Keep getting up. You know, that same shit we all heard. Right. This is a real feedback. And I chose intermediate comics, and my benchmark is 3 years or above. No, I couldn't find a way to prove it. It's not like there's a certificate. Yeah. Right. But it's like I chose at least intermediate for 3 years because I don't want to have someone, and I had a bunch of people ask me, A, could you go be on the last one? And B, for the next one, hey, can I be on? Like, how long have you been doing comedy for? Oh, a year or 2 years. I don't want to have them come on, eat a plate of dicks, and then face the music, and then be like, not shun, but just like completely turned off from comedy and never do it again because they're too new and they face such expert quote unquote opinions, and then they just were disgusted by that and they decided never to go back. So that's why I'm like, 3 years or more, you've at least seen enough and been around long enough to develop thicker skin. So if you want to gamble, come on down. Right. Because you don't, especially when in the beginning, someone's saying 3 years, you're like, that's forever. Like, 3 years, I got to have a TV show. I got to be in Hollywood in 3 years. I'm just going to say Comedy Central special. Right. I remember I took a comedy class in Boston. I was like, cool, I'll take this class. This is 6 weeks. The next class is 6 weeks. Then I have to wait a month. And then the next class is 3 weeks. And then I'll be ready to move to LA. Right. So that phase of my brain, I would have tried to enter your show. Right. Which probably then that footage would have existed forever. And
I would have probably shot myself. So
maybe. Hey,
Maybe.
some people, some newbies out there. I mean, Jason Scoop's been in it for very little time, and
Right.
he won episode 1.
So when someone wins, like,
Right.
is it you guys, like, you match up all the points and then?
Well, yeah, we nominate 2 people.
Yep.
And then we find a consensus.
Cool.
And
And
then-
then
right.
and then they get to perform at.
A club that I'm trying to work on. I'm trying to get like a top tier club because
Right.
anyone can walk into I'm not going to name clubs.
Right.
I want a high level club, like a
Right.
Gotham, like a
Right.
Caroline's, like a Stand, something like that.
Right.
Something cool stature. So someone who's been doing it for not a little bit, like at least 3 years, has that like club circled as like a big achievement,
Right.
without having to do a bringer show there.
Right.
That's the gift as well. That's the carrot as well as, hey, it's another way really to get the exposure to comics.
Sure.
As opposed to the typical, let's all hang out at a bar or comedy club and maybe we'll get lucky and get the check spot.
Right.
This is another way.
The check spot.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Ding. See how I worked that in there?
Boom.
But yeah, no, that's it's just a way. The end goal is really just to gain exposure for intermediate comics because it's tough.
It's tough. What's been the main has there been backlash?
There has been.
What's been the main backlash?
So I have it on a lot of different sites. YouTube being the biggest, Facebook
Yeah.
videos, Vimeo, Funny or Die. I have.
Funny or Die. That's great.
Yeah, I'm not
That's
getting as many
great.
views on that as I want to.
It's tough.
It is. But there's one website. It's called Live Leak. I don't know if you heard of Live Leak.
Never heard of it. I'm gonna
Live
write
Leak
it
is
down.
like the YouTube for Europeans or people who want to do nothing but watch decapitation videos,
Oh, geez.
military strikes, and chemical fires.
Hello.
Yeah,
Great
but-
place for comedy.
Isn't it? Well, my buddy said try it on there. I put it on there, and they fucking hate it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say they loved it.
No, they hate. Get this off here. This isn't for this. This isn't for that. And my favorite hate. Actually, I did a video where I have a daughter now. She's
Congrats.
Thank you. She's almost a year. So I have a video of her, like you see her in the camera, but I'm reading my fan mail and hate mail, like as like it'd be her reading it.
Right.
My favorite piece of hate mail was from Live Leak. It was, quote, 4 non-funny Jews watching a bunch of other non-funny Jews. Now, episode 1, ready, was John Moses, a Canadian ginger,
Right.
not a Jew.
Definitely not Jewish. Even though it'd be more than okay if everyone was
Right.
Jewish.
No,
but
of course. And there are
yeah.
plenty of Jews on the show.
Right.
Number
is
two,
great.
number 2, Leah Bonema, definitely not a Jew.
Definitely not. Right.
Jimmy Failure, not a
Blonde hair, blue eye.
right,
Yeah.
and myself, a German boy, kind of
Right.
like Emmett Willman.
Yeah.
Not a boy though; she's a girl.
It's all good. It's all
4
good.
of us, definitely not Jews, but apparently, internationally, American comedians are assumed to be all Jews.
Right. And they were so angry that they wrote a letter.
They wrote comments on the video.
Okay, Jesus.
Right.
Do you respond to the comments?
I did for a bit because I just love tearing apart. But
Right.
honestly, there were so many. I'm like, I have an addictive personality.
Me too.
As most comics do.
Yeah.
I have, honest to Christ, too much. I have a day job. I do voiceover.
Right.
I do the show. I do comedy.
Right.
I would
Have a kid.
Exactly. That pesky little child of mine.
Right.
I would be wasting copious amounts of time fighting these trolls.
Oh, and there's no winning.
Right.
There's no winning.
Right. I mean, the old Ben Kenobi, who's still here, the fool or the person who follows the fool.
Right.
So I'm like, I shut it down. I turned all the comments off, so that way I won't even have the desire or the just to go back and check them out to see what
Right.
happens. So one guy then went to Twitter. One of the guys went to Twitter, and I tore him apart and then blocked him. Then he sent an email, and I wrote back and just blew him up. I'm like, look, you're obviously a sad, pathetic person. Look, I hated Batman, Superman, all right? But I didn't blow up Zack Snyder's feed because I thought the film sucked. Because
Right.
A, he doesn't care, and B, he's got other fish to fry, like
What was
fucking up
it-
the Justice League film.
What was the guy? What was the guy saying?
I hate the show. You suck. Blah. It was very generic, and I was like, look, I appreciate poignant
passion.
right? Poignant criticism,
Right.
But I'm like, I get it. You're a regular no one,
Right.
If you were funny, I'm like, that's great. I would give credit. Like I said, that guy with the 4 non-funny Jews. I thought that was hilarious,
Right.
So I put it out
Although,
there.
do you think he really thought you guys were? Was he just like anti-Semitic, or like what was his just?
That whole site is very anti-Semitic.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a rough one.
So you know what? Maybe it's good that they don't like you. Maybe if they did like you, that'd be a bad sign. Like
Right.
if they're like, "This is our shit," you'd be
Yeah.
like, "Ah."
But the flip side of the coin, Emma, is that that show has gotten a shit ton of views from Live Leak.
How
So-
many are we talking?
Everything added up, probably 25,000.
Nice.
Maybe more.
That's great.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like...
It's a double-edged sword is what it is.
It's a double-edged sword.
Right.
Did the comics that have been on it, have they noticed like people like approaching them about what... Like are people ever like, because that was wrong or that was unfair, or people like agreeing with what the feedback is?
Mostly some people... I would say the majority of the criticisms are like, yeah, you're right on point. Some people are like, you were too mean. Some people you weren't mean enough. Most people are saying you were right down the middle. But everyone is pretty much like, yeah, you guys are on point with that. Maybe here an anomaly here or there, but I would say 90%. They're on board.
How do people react? Do you notice that people criticize like female comics different from male comics? Because I'll look at the YouTube comments sometimes, and it's pretty obvious. A lot of times with female comics, people go to what they look like quicker. Like they'll be like fat arms, like that's a big thing.
There was definitely a lot of noticing more female looks,
right?
And in fact, we made fun of ourselves where. Tracy Jane.
So I saw that one.
That's it.
And when she comes on, you're like, oh my God, she looks, because I thought the same thing.
She's 44. She looks amazing.
Amazing.
Right.
And she had
a great set too.
Great set.
Which is like Mike Racine pointed out, great. He's like, here we are, like our tongues hanging out and like, wow, salivating. But she had like a lot of great jokes, like a legitimate laugh out loud moments.
Right.
So when you have 4 comics watching and you have a lot of laugh out louds, that's a great sign.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So you'll notice that the female comics, what do people usually go to for guys?
The way they look, the way they dress.
They'll do that with guys?
I mean, we do. And it's and some of the audience gets a little turned off. It's like, well, you guys, you can't help looks. But I'm like, well, look, if we don't call out the elephant in the room,
right,
we're just not doing it justice. Like
you're not doing it authentically.
Right. There was one comic go back and watch the first part of episode 2. I'll tell you her name later. You know her. She's dressed very weirdly, and we just make fun of her. Like, what the hell are you wearing? Like,
was she trying to do a character?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Right.
Dressed like a 12-year-old boy.
Well, that happens.
It does, but
I'm dressed like a 12-year-old boy.
No, not like this.
Really?
And her look was, again, I'll tell you off air. You'll
very
be like,
curious.
oh, I get it.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Do you think that female judges and male judges do they critique the acts differently? Have you noticed?
Leah was very positive, and that was her goal. She's like, I'm going to be very positive. That's my whole thing. She watched for different things, and she had a cool female perspective when watching, especially. So one comic was on. He had he had a hoodie on, but in the front part where his pouches are in the front, it was something like stuffed in there. She goes, that looks like a big, thick dick in his pocket. Like, guys would be like, what the hell? Like, we would never notice that.
Right.
But she was just called out. She's like, that is a thick, veiny dick in his pocket, it looks like. So we then started pontificating, like, what's in his pocket?
Right.
Tissues, fucking salami, I don't remember.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, because, definitely people will notice things like if you have something distracting on, then it's like, you're not paying attention.
Right. Or if they have a weird look, it's like, look, you and I go to a club and this person's on stage. I'm going to elbow you or you're going to elbow me and go, what the fuck, man? Seriously? Like, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't do that.
Right.
So look, and that's what comedians do. We bust balls.
Right.
Sometimes. A lot of
How
times.
do you find that people that aren't comedians are able to get the show? Or are they surprised? Like, I didn't know the comedians critique things like this.
We have a lot of the when people share it on Facebook, they're obviously non-comic friends are watching, and they're like, they message me or they'll put a comment and they're like, wow, that was so cool. I've never thought about that. But I was worried that hopefully the crossover would happen for the non-comics, and it's going very well. So I'm very thankful for that. A lot of people are like, this is really cool. It's very intoxicating was a couple of the words. And I'm like, addictive. And I'm like, wow, cool, thanks. I can't wait to look forward.
Yeah, because also people, I guess when you're not in comedy, you have no idea. It's how would you know what the process is? So even when someone's like, oh, I didn't know people listen to recordings and things like that. So to see people critique it the way comics critique it,
right?
Then they're also probably like, man, comics are brutal.
Right.
They're not all the laughing
sunshine
clown.
And puppy dogs.
The opposite, actually.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do is give a look into the inner realm.
Right. Now,
comics.
so what's coming up? You got season 2 coming up. What is the lineup for season 2?
I'm just about to nail down a casting day. I have a few panelists in mind.
Nice.
Possibly. No one locked up yet. What I do have coming up is every week I release a new segment because I shot episode 1 like a regular TV show, like
Yep.
22-minute episodes. Episode 2 was shot like a web series. So that way when I shop this thing, when I go to LA and shop this thing, knock on wood,
Yep.
I can talk to the TV networks and go, here's how it looks as a TV program. Or the web people, like, here's how it looks as a web series.
How were the meetings?
No, they're going to happen.
Nice.
They're going to happen.
Was it easy to get meetings?
I have an agent, not officially yet.
So
I
a
have to sign
meeting,
paperwork, but
a meeting in showbiz terms is basic. I mean, you can have like a pitch meeting or a general meeting. A lot of times, agents don't make you sign stuff anymore. I guess maybe unless you're shopping around something specific, then they're like, I want a guaranteed cut. But if they're getting you meetings, then that's great.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a call again in a few weeks, and
Yep.
then he's filming stuff, or he's doing a film right now, so then we'll take care of that.
Awesome.
We'll see. But what we have coming up though, we're doing a live show, a live Watching Comics show.
Cool.
June 8th, 7 p.m.
Nice.
New York Comedy Club. It's going to be some of the panelists you've seen. Some other people who did well on the show. Some people who did
Some of the panelists performing stand-up?
Yes.
Awesome.
Jimmy Failure. So I can tell you the lineup. Jimmy Failure.
Yep.
John Moses.
Awesome.
Cyrus McQueen.
Nice.
And people who did very well. Teresa DeCatano is going to be on.
Awesome.
Joan Weisblatt, Pamela Ray. And we're also having a little section. Of course, I'll be doing some time as well.
Awesome.
We're also going to have a section called The Redemption, which is where people who ate shit are each going to have 1 minute, and the audience is going to vote who wins, and they'll get a full spot that night at the show.
Awesome.
So 3 people are going to have 1 minute a shot, and then the winner, like I said, is going to get a spot on that show.
And that's June 8th at New York Comedy Club?
Right.
7 p.m.?
7 p.m. Go on the Comics Watching Comics page. You can find a link that will give you a code, or just click on the link, and the tickets are $5.
Awesome. Cool. So it's comicswatchingcomics.com, and then where can people find you, just your personal stuff at?
Sure. I'm on, KevinGootee.com, GOOTEE. Twitter, same name, Kevin Gootee. That's the gist. You can find me with my dates and such. But yeah, comicswatchingcomics.com, at comicswatching on Twitter. And that's actually real quick about that, with the Twitter part. When hopefully the show gets picked up, that's where the home audience plays along, because the home audience is going to pick a panelist that they like the most. And then the most votes with the panelists, then they come back to the following week's show.
Nice.
That's where the at midnight portion comes in.
Nice.
So the home audience gets to vote on the panelists they like the most. And as of episode 1, Jimmy Failure was the most loved.
Was he? So people have been voting?
Yeah, or they've been telling me in person, like,
Right.
or emailing or texting, like, "God damn, Jimmy's great." I'm like, "Yeah, he was. He was fantastic."
So could theoretically Jimmy be on like every episode if he keeps getting voted back?
Well, not episode 2 because we already shot the panels back
Right.
to back. But I mean, 3 and 4 will be different. Actually, 3 and 4, we're going to have a master panelist. I'm going to change the format a little bit.
Nice.
Jeffrey Gurian is going to be our master panelist.
Awesome.
He's going to be the guy who's going to give us an official thumbs up or thumbs down on our selection of the winning comic.
Very competitive. Well, make sure to check it out, comicswatchingcomics.com, June 8th at New York Comedy Club. And thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Emma. This was great.
Of course.
You're in the check spot on Raw Dog Comedy.